A lot of athletes these days think they're above the law.
You're out of order! You're out of order! The whole trial is out of order!
Let's get an inside look at the legal side of sports.
One of my favorite segments of the week, our sports legal expert. He, of course, is Rick Calzada, one of the partners in My Law Solution over in Winter Park. Rick is my lawyer, so let my lawyer be your lawyer. Let My Law Solution be your law solution. You can give him a call at 407-843-2222 or online at mylawsolution.com. Rick, as always, we welcome you to the show. It's been a very tough week in Orlando. Just your thoughts on what has happened to our city.
It's so sad in so many ways. I mean, just walking around downtown on that Monday, it seemed like there was no energy. You know, downtown has a feel to it.
Yeah. A buzz, a juice.
Yes. And it was not there until late, because late when they're holding that vigil, you could feel downtown filling up. The traffic was as if for a sporting event. I didn't know the vigil was going to happen. I thought maybe a game was scheduled. That's what it felt like out there. The bars were full. People were walking to the vigil, and it really brought like a sense of community. You know, people of all walks of life coming together. And I think that, to me, is, if I can say, the most beautiful part of this is the reaction and the generosity and the compassion that you feel from complete strangers when something like this happens. It shows what kind of city we are.
I want to ask you a couple of legal questions about the tragedy. Obviously, we've talked about the gun laws in this country and being able to acquire assault weapons. Do you think that this could be a tipping point for that? Because Bill O'Reilly, a very conservative commentator at Fox News, even he is now questioning assault weapons.
So it depends on what you mean by tipping point. All right. Do I think that there's going to be some legislation after this? I do. All right. And it's not just because of this event, but it's this event following the death of Anthony Scalia. That is what I think is going to cause the shift, as opposed to Sandy Hook, where basically nothing happened after Sandy Hook with children dead. This time is different because the most stringent supporter of gun rights and the Second Amendment is no longer on the bench. And, I mean, he was a true force on the bench. And his opinion in the Heller case, I think it was 2008, where he basically said the Second Amendment was codified to protect the right to bear and hold firearms. That was in response to Washington, D.C., which had a complete ban on any firearms within the city. So you couldn't even have a handgun in your own home for protection. And Scalia came thoroughly on the side of gun ownership to protect yourself, your family, and your home. But he's gone now, and things are going to change. There's no doubt in my mind. Now, I own an AR-15 rifle. I shoot with CPAs, financial advisors, and other attorneys. And to think that there would be an all-out ban again, or potential confiscation, which Obama's talked about in the past. Australia did it in 1996. Actually,
they had a mass shooting.
They came out and started confiscating weapons. And so when I think about that, I just dislike bans altogether. Trump's talk about banning all Muslims coming in, it's silly. It's ridiculous. Now, banning anything in and of itself is too far, but it doesn't mean you can't take steps. So right now, I could go to a gun store right now. I could pay $1,200. I could walk out that morning with an AR-15. I can't do that with a handgun. I can't do that with a firearm. I got to wait my 3 days.
Why can you do that with an AR-15?
Because it's not something that you can conceal. And so just think about that for a second. I have to wait 3 days to buy a sidearm, but I can walk in today and leave today with an AR-15. And I think that is a common sense measure that we can take. If it's good enough for a firearm for 3 days, then why can't you do it with a rifle?
I want to ask you about you say you have an AR-15.
Sure.
In the wake of all of this stuff, like when I just heard you say you've got an AR-15, I'm like, oh, why do you have an AR-15?
Yeah.
Have you had to answer those questions in the wake of things like this?
I bought it after Sandy Hook because I wanted to have it, to experience it and see what it was like and understand, what is it? What am I dealing with? And I found it to be like any other rifle. I mean, it's like any other rifle. And so I
Wait, like a 30-06? It's like that?
It's like a 30-06. Now it can hold, if you buy a magazine which holds more rounds, then it can hold more rounds. But really, it's no different than the 30-06 that I do own in every respect. I can customize it and add things to it, but I go on the weekends and I go shoot. It's relaxing and I enjoy doing that. It's a hobby.
Gotcha. One other legal question about that. There's a lot of talk that the FBI had interviewed the shooter. They suspected him of being a ISIS sympathizer. Is there anything legally? I mean, if they don't have any evidence that he's actually going to do something, or is there anything legally they can do?
Really, there's not. I mean, again, kind of like 9/11. This reminds me of 9/11 in the sense that we're looking back and we see all the clues that were there that we just didn't, in the words of the bureaucrats, didn't connect the dots. All right, so you had contact in 2013 with the FBI, 2014 with the FBI, and they conducted investigations and apparently tended to believe the now shooter over the coworkers that were making the allegations. Look, this guy is talking about doing some crazy things. And I don't know if you saw the news last night, but there was a report at a WFTV that Disney alerted the FBI in April of this year about the shooter, that he had been seen casing downtown Disney. And I don't know how Disney figured it out, whether they have some sort of facial recognition software or what, but they went to the FBI in April and said, hey, we got a guy apparently casing out our downtown Disney.
Wow.
So 13, 14, and 16 contacts, but he walks into a gun store a week or two ago and can buy an AR-15. There's something wrong with that.
Yeah. Switching gears, did you hear Stephen A. Smith yesterday?
I didn't hear him, but I heard his statements.
Okay, well, ESPN's doing a big 30 for 35-part documentary on the O.J.
Sure.
Not just the trial, but O.J. Simpson and that whole time in American history. Well, ESPN's been talking a lot about it. Well, yesterday, Stephen A. Smith said this.
I have profound respect for the late Johnny Cochran, God rest his soul. But if it might be the cockiest thing that I've ever said. Christopher Darden and Marsha Clark did an absolutely horrendous job as prosecutors. Because if it were me, there's no way in hell Johnny Cochran would have beaten me with that evidence that they had. I'm telling you right now, I'm not even a lawyer. There is no way that you would have put 12 jurors in front of me with that evidence, and I would have lost to even to Johnny Cochran. I'd have won that trial.
Would Stephen A. Smith have won that trial, Rick Calzada?
I don't think he would have won that trial. and here's why, okay? The prosecutors are dealt certain hands, okay? And in this case, they were dealt with, at the time, a sloppy police force with respect on how they handle chain of evidence, how they collect evidence, and how they handle it up into trial, okay? Things have changed dramatically since then because lessons were learned from this particular case. The way they collected evidence was criminal. Okay, they took evidence, they mixed it together. There was potential contamination. They took evidence and put it in a hot van, left it outside. They couldn't figure out who went from one person to another, and it created all kinds of questions which the prosecutors couldn't overcome.
All right, but what about the argument that you can say you are trying to claim that this police department that is so inept that they're doing all the things you just mentioned, yet they are smart enough to conspire within 20 minutes to frame a man that they all admire?
I'm not telling you that I believe that the police department framed OJ.
No, but I'm saying, can't you make that argument in court? Can't you also say, okay, yes, maybe they left this blood in a van, but all that does is reduce the likelihood of a DNA match. It doesn't change it into somebody else's blood.
It's an argument, but one of the allegations was that blood was collected in a vial from the crime scene put in someone's pocket and then went to O.J. Simpson's house to question him. Okay? That cannot happen ever. Taking evidence from a crime scene and taking it to the suspect's home. And the way they went in the suspect's home, they knocked on the door or the gate or whatever you want to call it, and he didn't let him in. So what did Furman do? He jumped the fence and kind of created a contact when contact should not have been had because they wanted to get to him before the lawyers were there. And you put all these things together in front of a jury, and it raises...
All right, let's talk about the jury then. Yeah. Why on earth would they not fight harder for the change of venue? Why wouldn't they fight harder to keep the venue where it was rather than changing the venue?
I don't think a change of venue would have made any difference. I mean,
you don't think a jury is going to be different in Brentwood than...
No, I don't think so. I don't think this was a national story. I don't care where you were. You were touched by it. I was in Tallahassee at the time, and I remember all of us sitting down. I think it was during the NBA Finals. I don't know. We were all together watching TV, which is unusual. Yeah. And all of a sudden, you see the Ford, you see everything happening out there, and it becomes a national story where every single person in Tallahassee was talking about it. So I don't care if you're in Brentwood or you're in L.A. or you're San Francisco or San Diego, you are going to know O.J. Simpson, and you're going to know all about the facts of this case.
Well, that's all the more reason to not change the venue then. The venue, if it takes place where it was supposed to, the jury is going to be more apt to understand DNA evidence. A lot of the jury didn't even get what they were trying to say with the DNA evidence. They said afterwards they didn't even understand it.
So that I would argue that is the fault of the prosecutors.
Which is the whole point of this discussion, right?
The prosecutors took 6 months to present their case. 6 months is a very long time for a simple murder. Okay? Think about the Oklahoma City bombing. It took federal prosecutors 6 weeks to put on that case. Far more complicated.
Yeah.
So, you can lose a jury. 6 months is a long time to lose a jury because the jury has to ask them a question. Why is it taking so long? Mm-hmm. Is it because you have the best case in the world or the worst case in the world? And you're kind of doing a shotgun approach. And I'm sure it's not that jury went with the latter.
I don't think Stephen A. Smith could have won the case, but I do think Rick Calzada could have won the case.
I believe I could have won that case.
I think he could have too.
They had to keep it simple.
Do you think Vincent Bugliosi wins that case? The man who prosecuted Manson. The guy with a 90% conviction rate who wrote the book Outrage that outlines the 5 reasons why the prosecution was inept.
I believe a competent prosecutor should have won that case. I don't believe Stephen A. Smith is a competent prosecutor.
Rick Calzada, he is my lawyer. Let My Law Solution be your law solution. They do it all. They do criminal matters. They do bankruptcy protection, foreclosures. Give them a call, 407-843-2222, or online at mylawsolution.com. Rick, we appreciate it.
Y'all take care.
We appreciate it.
Y'all take care.
We appreciate it.